ignoring my alerts?
No, I haven't been ignoring them. There's one right now. And delete. See? Not being ignored.
What? But why? I worked hard on those alerts.
Well, yeah, and they're great. It just doesn't apply to me, so I don't need it. Hence, delete.
Well, if it doesn't apply to you, then I don't need it to be sent to you.
Yeah, but I like to know things.
Well, there's better ways to know things.
But email's easy, so I can get it, I can read it, determine in real time whether I care enough, and when I don't, delete. Easy enough.
Easy doesn't mean it's the best way to get that information, though.
Yeah, and I think a lot of our customers run into this problem because they're easy. I mean, if we're completely honest, if you build yourself an alert, it's next, finish, and email. Yay. But you need to take the time to actually go through a logical decision process here. You know, does this need to be alert? Does it need to be right now? What is an alert? Who does it need to go to? During what time frames? Or maybe, does it need to be an alert? It needs to be tracked, of course, but maybe it needs to be presented in a different way. And you've got to navigate this almost on an every alert basis.
Yeah. And I know it sounds like a lot of work up front, and maybe it is the first time or two times that you do it. Well, but when people get used to answering the question of who, what, when, where, why, and how, after answering those questions for their alerts, then they'll start doing it automatically. When they ask you for an alert, they'll send you that information starting off, and it'll be a lot faster. Everyone will get the things that they need and that they can take action on in an email, and in other ways, for things that they can't take action on, they can get that data that they need in a way that they need to digest it.
Yeah. And I think it's worth taking a small step back and making sure people understand that alert is not the email. It's a little vocab lesson, but the alert is a trigger condition. So it's not the message that appears. The message that appears is the net result of the alert. So yeah. I'm not explaining this perfectly. How would you explain alert?
Well, let's start with what it's not, which is that the email itself is a notification. I think it's very key because to point that out, because people also will get text messages or whatever, you know, they get their SMS from their alert system, right? There are other ways to get that information, right? That's a notification. Then an alert itself is a thing happened, period. That's it.
Okay.
You told it in your trigger condition what thing you want to know happened. It does something when that thing happened. Now, what it does, that's where the actions come in. And I have seen hundreds of times people do what you just described and do the next, because email is automatically selected, but they don't even pay attention to that enormous page of other things that you can do, even within the Orion Alert, not to mention the other things we're going to talk about today, which is reporting and dashboards. Just within the alert, there's a lot of things that you can do.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that people think an alert is all one amalgamation. But it's not. The alert is basically a set of trigger conditions, and those trigger conditions, when the scenario hits, then it takes this preset defined set of actions with escalations in there, possible remediation in there, all kinds of other craziness in there. And we know from working with the platform that that entire thing is a single one alert.
Yep.
Even if it has 10 actions, emails 40 different people independently, it's still an alert. The trick is you need to start thinking about this in that way to understand when you can reuse action, when you can just tweak a couple things in the actual alert, the trigger condition. Maybe you don't want things to let you know when something hits a warning threshold, unless it hits that warning threshold and stays that way for 30 minutes. That's a quick, easy change. That's not another new alert. It's a quick edit.
Yeah. Yeah. We need to get away from the mindset of when you think of an alert, you think, send me an email, because unfortunately, this can lead to alert fatigue, right? Where people are getting hundreds or thousands of emails, especially if they just turned on the out of the box alerts and left the default email to field with something filled in there, right? Like, so that poor person or distribution list or whatever that you set up in that default email to field is getting hundreds of thousands of alerts and doing what with them? Probably nothing.
Probably nothing.
I've seen inbox folders set up where all of their Orion alerts go to, and then they have like 10,000 unread messages in there, and they go, well, why didn't I get an alert when this thing went down? This is business critical application. Well, how would you know? Mm-hmm. When was the last time you checked that folder of 10,000 unread messages from your Orion system? Like, how would you even know? Because you have gotten so many that you literally don't even look at them anymore, or you automatically delete them, or you set up a rule to delete certain ones, and then you're going to miss others. It's just a real problem. So we need to think of it as email is not the only option, and actions does not equate alert.
Mm-hmm. And the action of email does not need to be your default. In fact, it probably shouldn't be. If I think you and I are on the same page, if there is one thing that I want to be the default action when I build a new alert from scratch, the very first thing should be right to the log.
Yeah.
Because that is a much better way to do record keeping, because it's all in one place instead of, and I've seen people do this, where it all shuttles to that Orion alerts folder, and then they scroll through and say, well, I got this one at this time, and the same thing on this time, and the same thing at that. It's so much easier just to go to the log that can be displayed on any page, but better on the node details page to show you every time a log pertaining to this thing appeared.
Yeah, and then you can set up a weekly report or a monthly report or whatever to tell you how often that thing is getting logged, so that you know, yeah, that was informational, but if it's happening 20 times a day for a week, well, that's probably a problem. But you don't need it every time that you get it. So that's what you need to think about. Are there better ways to ingest that data and get that data to who needs it? So there's several questions. We're going to go through what we have decided is the notification decision tree.
Mm-hmm. And it starts off with a lot of questions. Sorry, this is the way all of these start.
Yeah, you got to start it, and we're going to go with the first thing. Does anyone really need to know? That's question number one. When I worked with customers all the time on a regular basis of varying sizes of environments, and various teams were involved with their monitoring system, they would pull people in and say, okay, well, we're going to add all of the Exchange monitoring. And I want you to set up alerts. Okay, why? What alerts? What do you need to know? What are you going to actually be able to take action on? Those are the things that you need to know, because they default to everyone else. It's not just your Orion administrators. Everyone defaults to an alert being an email, and that's just not the right way to go about it. That's not the way you want to think about things, because we'll go right back around to the alert fatigue. If you're getting an email every time this thing happens and you can't do anything about it, then don't get that in an email, or get an email every 10 times that happens so you can get a report about it. But my point is that email should not be the de facto. So what other questions are we going to ask?
Well, it boils down to who needs to know, on what frequency, and at what level. Because as the IT practitioner, the person responsible for the server or the application or the network infrastructure or the storage, you need to know, typically, with significantly more detail level than your manager does. And your manager needs to know a little bit of detail, but less than their supervisor does. And the C-suite doesn't need to know any of that. They just need to know good, bad, indifferent. Super simple.
Yeah.
And
yeah, they want the dashboard with the green dot, right? Network is good.
Yeah, everything is happy. The big green dot, the staring green eye. So the way I've thought about this, and the way that I started to implement it at previous companies, and the way I recommend a lot of people do this, is you need to think about this kind of like a pyramid, because that'll inform the path you take as you're determining whether someone gets a report, an alert, you take time to build a dashboard, or some combination of those, because it's not going to be a clear-cut answer for every single thing. Sometimes it's going to be an evolving thing where it starts off an alert and then people start to get fatigue and they're like, too much. Can we change the alert so it happens only every so often? Or maybe I don't need that. Maybe I need to know only after this occurred 10 times in a 24-hour period. Perfect. Thank you. We'll just write it to a log, and then we'll ask that log how often this thing happened in the last 24 hours. And that can turn into a report or an alert. There's lots of ways to do this, but the IT staff are going to be the most diverse group of people. They're the ones that are the network admins, the systems admins, the server, the vert, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have their initial management level. And their management level is generally fewer bodies, but need more of a routine. They don't need to know when something breaks now. They need to know when something breaks now.
Unless they're part of the escalation.
Yes. And that is a different discussion and part of this entire process.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got to think about like your IT leadership. You know, there's your directors, your division heads, whatever language you want to use in your organization. And they need to know slightly less technical details. They're almost to the point of the green up and the red down, but they've got some knowledge. They're the ones that will reach out and work with other teams and build those bridges. So they need to have a little bit more. And then, of course, you have like your C-suite, your CIO, your CTO, your CISO, if you work for the security group. They don't need to know every single thing. I mean, can you imagine sending your CEO or your CIO or your CTO every time there was a packet loss somewhere? You wouldn't have a job.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. They would be like, why is your monitoring broken?
Yeah. I'm obviously on the wrong distribution list, but it's not my problem. It should be fixed. And I've looked at this a lot and I've talked to people, and there's really just kind of two very simple corollaries to this, for lack of a term, that as you move up this period, you need to work better about data summarization. I don't need to know on this set of servers every single date, time, the CPU percentage, and the RAM percentage consumption every time it broke a threshold. I don't care. I need to know maybe as I go up this, I need to know, maybe it happened to this particular set of servers 9 times, but I don't need the details for every single one. I just need like the count of 9 and maybe the summarization of over that time, this percentage. And then the flip side of that is you want to keep your frequency in mind. Because you're doing summarization on this stuff, you're not talking point in time. You're not talking an alert right now. You're talking a daily summary or a weekly summary, monthly, quarterly. I don't think annually applies too much, but it can depending on your organization. And these are kind of the de factos that I go to when I'm trying to make a decision about whether this goes into an email alert, a text alert, push to a chat system, or put into a ticket, or whether this should be put into a report, and maybe that report's scheduled once a week, once a month, or maybe put it into a dashboard so people can just go to that page, wait for it to refresh, and they have the most recent information.
Yeah. And this is a great way to think about it whenever you're getting ready. When someone asks you to build them an alert or build them monitoring, a lot of times they don't really know because they don't know what your monitoring platform is capable of. They don't know what your alerting structure is like. They default to that alert equals email, and that may not be the best choice. And if you can present them their data in a way that is more digestible and makes more sense for their personal responsibilities, they will thank you for it. And they will not mind answering those questions when they ask for new things because they know they're going to get that data in a way that lets them quickly do their job, that lets them quickly get to the end goal, because that's what they want. They don't want to have to wade through the individual details to try and piece the puzzles together whenever it's a CIO or a leadership, right? They don't need all the individual data points. They need a picture that says this is what happens. And you can need to care about it or don't need to care about it, right? If it's a retail store, right? They probably care when all the point of sale systems go down, even at the CIO level. They're going to care.
Yeah.
So these are the things that you have to think about. There are obviously going to be exceptions, but for the most part, if you can ask these questions, if you can get to a point where you're giving data in a way that is actionable, or if it's informational only, is presented in a way that information makes sense for the job that they're doing, everyone will be better off.
Yeah.
Everyone.
And it begins with a conversation. And if you're having trouble imagining how to start this conversation, then I have a simple suggestion. So if we take that list we're already working with, I would basically, if it's IT staff, people that are responsible for the day-to-day operation, I would say more than likely, not always, and please be very diligent about how many, but I think they need alerts because they're the ones that actually can do the thing. This service was stopped on this server for 30 minutes. I can fix that. Thank you for the email. I will take care of that now. But management doesn't necessarily need to know that. And that's where management kind of gets a blend. For me, sometimes they need alerts in this scenario as an escalation thing. So if we take that service down thing, service is down. After 15 minutes of it being down, that's when the alert triggers. One of the alert actions is write a log. The second alert action is to try to restart the service. And then that's it, except for an escalation level.
Yeah.
At that escalation level.
Yeah. So, and then sometimes they just need a dashboard. They need a dashboard that covers all of their responsibilities or part of their responsibilities. Maybe they need multiple dashboards.
Yeah. And the beauty of that is if you build them for IT staff, or better yet, encourage IT staff to build their own dashboards, because you can now with the modern dashboard, people can import those pieces that you've already built. So if Crystal makes a fantastic, actually you did, and I showed it in a session last year, or it's been a while, but you built something and I was like, I want this, can you give me the code behind it? And you were like, no. You can literally just at the top say, search for my dashboard name, and it's I think it was a KPI widget, and it was there, and I said, add, and it just appeared. I'm like, being able to do that through all of these tiers, basically building this from all of the IT staff level, you could actually build a really easy dashboard that the DBAs built for their infrastructure, and then the server team built for their infrastructure, and the network team, which is green across the board, because the network is never the problem, that one could just all be imported to a dashboard. Really easy.
Yeah. And then like a puzzle, you can put all those pieces onto a nice view for your leadership.
And that's where reports come in, because the reports, at least from my vantage point, aren't necessarily about the health and welfare of the system. For me, I've always used reports more for future proofing or planning going future. And that could be something as simple as a weekly WAN report, like how much we're actually using in megabits or whatever. But that's the information that my leadership would need to then plan for the next quarter or the next calendar year or the next 10 years if you're really looking out far. Being able to have access to that information and summarizing it in such a way that they can work with it, that's how you make friends in those levels.
Yeah. And I would argue too that reports can be extremely useful for management level as well. In my experience, if they have a regular report, if it's weekly or monthly or whatever, for whatever their responsibilities are, then they have that data on hand. They can have it in, a PDF or whatever, so that when they have to go to their management or their bosses and they have to ask for more resources or whatever, I mean, the same thing that the leadership is doing, but at a more detailed level. Reports are good for that too. Reports are extremely powerful. And if you have a little bit of time, you can make some really good, very robust reports that look good and have lots of detailed information in them. You want more detail traditionally in a report than you're going to want in a dashboard. If we're talking about modern dashboards, and those are beautiful screens that have the information on them in bright colors so that you can easily see red is bad, green is good. If you're colorblind, there's options for that too. But my point is, a report is usually a little bit more information than that, and you can get more detailed information. So they are useful at multiple levels. We're not trying to say that they're not, but if you're starting at a base level and you're thinking about how can I get this data to someone and what level data, this is a good starting point. And obviously you can work your way back. If they come back with feedback, make sure that feedback loop is open, that conversation is open. They can give you feedback and you can make tweaks to where you get to a point where they're happy with it. And you can't be upset when they ask for more tweaks, because they need that data in a specific way. And if you start to get upset, they start to write off the monitoring, they start to write off the information that they're getting, and they might start saying things like the data is inaccurate, or you're not monitoring the things that I need you to monitor, or whatever. And then next thing you know, you're looking at full in the face of trying to figure out a whole new monitoring project. So just saying, it's in your best interest to work with them and keep that feedback loop open.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I like so much about the way the Orion Web Reporting works, is that I can build that real detail report for like my direct manager. And that will have the information that she needs to make decisions on our team. And then I can take that information And there's aggregate functions built into the report. So I can basically just copy that report, say, I need you to aggregate these, give me the average, the min, max, what have you, count of distinct, whatever. Give me the aggregate information over this time period and save that report. And that's all of a sudden for her management. And then if I need to do it again, I can do it again. And it's being able to take those and build a thing once and use it over and over again. Or if you can't just do a copy paste on it, at least use it for inspiration to be like, here are 6 reports that I built. What would you like on the one I'm going to build for you? Do you need this field or that field? Do you want this as a percentage? How do you want this stuff? And if you have that, 80% of your questions are answered.
Yeah, and that aggregate function also makes it really great for whenever they want you to come up with basically the same information. They want the same data, but they want it to be aggregated by, first they want a monthly report, and then they want a quarterly report, and then they want a yearly report because they need it for their planning or their big meetings or whatever they need it for. They'll tell you that they need those reports. And if you can just you built it once, and then you just copy it and edit it and make those changes, then you can do it over and over again, however many times you need to.
Yeah, I like that. I like being able to save them. I like being able to take ones that other people have built on Thwack who are much smarter than I am and just pull them right into my system and just run them and then maybe make some tweaks. One thing that people seem to overlook in reports, and I know you talked about this frequently, is you're not restricted to a single data set. A report is just a data presentation of whatever you want on the backside. And you can have multiple columns, you can have multiple breaks. I like actually putting HTML breaks in areas and like changing it to specific fonts and stuff like that, where I'll actually say basically a summarization of what the next section is. And then you can have that, split it, put graphics, whatever. Basically have that presented in a single report that may have 15 or 20 different data types in it. So being able to actually have all that information, build it once, use it over and over again, you're going to be more successful.
Yeah. And that brings us through to, okay, we've gone through the notification pyramid. Now that you know what you want, I also want to bring attention to, and I totally borrowed this slide as we're talking about, borrowing or not having to remake something. I totally borrowed this slide from a live cast that Kevin and I did recently because it's still applicable, right? Because we've got these alerts and now we can take remediation actions automatically. You do not have to get an email and then go take that action. If it is repeatable and constant, every time this thing happens, I will do this, automate it.
Yep.
Why do you need to do it every time? Yes, you need to log it. You need to know what's happening, but you don't need to every time get an email, log in. It's 2 a.m. now. I'm just going to do the same thing that I was going to do in the office or whatever. I'm going to do the same thing every time this thing happens. Why not automate it? Stay asleep. Get that notification in a different way. Log it to the event log, and then you can get reports on those events or what have you. Like, you don't need to manually log into, can you imagine? I can't imagine anymore manually logging into a bunch of individual devices to do the same thing over and over again. I think a lot of people have gone more towards automation because I don't know about you, but I don't want to have a middle of the night change windows where I have to go make all these changes and all that. And those are still going to happen. We can't avoid them, but we could make them less if we could set them up to be scheduled or automated or whatever, and only get notified when something goes wrong.
Mm-hmm. Catastrophically wrong. And that's the thing. Yeah. If you take this approach to the way you're doing your alerting and you actually go through this decision tree and ask the important questions, who, what, when, at what aggregation level, at what frequency level, and you have this information, you're going to avoid alert fatigue. You're going to inform your management of what they need to know in a way that they're happy with. And you're not alone in this. You can go to Thwack and we've got examples of reports. We've got examples of alerts, modern dashboards, all kinds of things that other people have used in their environments that you can use in your environments. You don't have to build it from scratch.
Just like I did that slide from the live cast.
Yeah, exactly like that.
Well, I love this. So what's your schedule look like?
I'm kind of busy right now with Thwack Camp as you are. So why don't we plan for next week instead?
Well, yeah, but we should get this tightened up. So let's get you data that looks the way that you can use it.
Perfect. Thanks.